The brain broadcasts before you do. It happens in a fraction of a second. Before you've fully processed what just occurred. Before you've decided how to respond. Before you've even confirmed that yes, that actually just happened. Your face tells everyone. The heat rises. The color spreads. The eyes drop. The body folds slightly inward, as if trying to reduce its own surface area. Embarrassment is one of the most socially involuntary experiences a human being can have. And that involuntary quality, the fact that your body announces it before you can choose whether to reveal it, is not a design flaw. It is, researchers believe, a deeply sophisticated social signal. Psychologist Dacher Keltner at UC Berkeley has spent decades studying embarrassment, and what he found challenges everything most people assume about it. Embarrassment display, the visible, physical signs of being embarrassed, actually increases how much other people trust and like you. When you blush, look away, and shrink slightly, observers read it as evidence that you care about social norms, that you understand you violated something, that you are not indifferent to how your behavior affects the social environment. In other words, your embarrassment signals to everyone watching that you are a safe person to be around. The very thing that feels like your brain betraying you in public is actually your brain performing a sophisticated act of social repair. It's just doing it without asking your permission first. Time distortion. The moment it happens, something strange occurs with your experience of time. A 2-second stumble, a single misread sentence read aloud incorrectly. One awkward silence that lasted maybe 3 beats too long. In the moment, it feels eternal. And in the memory, it plays back at full length in high definition, with every detail preserved, for what can feel like the rest of your life. This is one of the most consistent features of embarrassment, and it has a neurological explanation. When the brain registers a significant social threat, and embarrassment is experienced by the brain as exactly that, it releases a surge of adrenaline and activates the amygdala, the brain's emotional recording system. Emotionally charged events get encoded more deeply and more vividly than neutral ones. The brain essentially flags them as important, as events worth remembering, because they carry survival-relevant information about what to avoid in future social situations. The problem is that this encoding system doesn't distinguish between actually dangerous events and socially awkward ones. So the time you tripped on stage at the school play gets stored with roughly the same neurological intensity as a genuinely traumatic experience, and it plays back with similar vividness. At 2 a.m., unprompted, with full sensory detail, your brain isn't torturing you. It's just filing a memory it decided was important, using a system that was built for a world where social mistakes had much higher stakes than they do today. The audience that isn't there. Here's perhaps the most fascinating brain glitch that embarrassment produces. You can be completely alone, no witnesses, no audience, no possibility of anyone having seen what just happened, and still feel fully physically embarrassed. You trip in an empty room. You say something out loud to yourself and immediately cringe. You remember something embarrassing from 10 years ago while lying in bed and feel the heat rise in your face as if it's happening right now. This tells us something profound about what embarrassment actually is. It is not primarily a response to being seen. It is a response to imagining being seen. The brain runs a social simulation, a mental model of how an observer would perceive you, and responds to that simulation as if it were real. This is the same neural machinery that allows humans to feel empathy, to predict other people's behavior, to navigate complex social environments. It's one of the most sophisticated cognitive systems our species has. But when it turns its attention inward, when it starts running simulations of how you look from the outside, it produces this peculiar experience of being embarrassed in front of an audience that exists entirely within your own head. The imaginary observer is often more judgmental, more attentive, and more unforgiving than any real observer would actually be, because it's being run by your brain, and your brain knows all the most unflattering angles. the freeze, flee, or fumble response. When embarrassment hits, the brain needs to do something with all the activation it's just generated. And it has essentially three options: freeze, flee, or fumble. Some people freeze. They go still, quiet, deer in headlights, still, while the brain frantically tries to compute the optimal response and comes back with nothing. Some people flee, physically or emotionally. They leave the room, change the subject, make a joke, deflect with humor, do anything to create distance between themselves and the moment as fast as possible. And some people fumble. They over-explain, over-apologize, fill the silence with words that make everything slightly worse, dig the hole a little deeper in the process of trying to climb out of it. All three responses share a common driver. The brain has assessed the situation as threatening and activated its emergency response system. The same system that handles physical danger is now handling your pronunciation error in front of your colleagues. And that system is not subtle. It is not nuanced. It is not designed for the delicate social arithmetic of navigating awkward moments gracefully. It is designed to handle threats quickly, decisively. The result is that the response the brain generates is almost always disproportionate to the actual situation, which then makes the whole experience more memorable and more painful than it needed to be. The shame spiral. Embarrassment and shame are not the same thing. This distinction matters enormously. Embarrassment is about an event. Something happened. It was awkward. Other people saw it. The feeling is tied to a specific moment and, in healthy processing, it fades as the moment recedes. Shame is about identity. It moves from what I did to who I am. From that was embarrassing to I am embarrassing. The brain glitch that matters most in the experience of embarrassment is when the brain makes that leap, when it slides from processing an event to making a conclusion about your fundamental worth as a person. And for many people, especially those who grew up in environments where mistakes were treated as character indictments rather than normal human errors, that slide happens almost automatically. Something mildly embarrassing occurs, and within seconds, the internal narrative has expanded it into evidence of a deeper failing, into proof of something they've always suspected about themselves but hoped wasn't true. Psychologist Brené Brown's research on shame describes this as one of the most corrosive experiences available to a human being, not because the original event was significant, but because of the story the brain attaches to it. The antidote is not to stop feeling embarrassed. The antidote is to get very good at catching the moment the brain tries to make the leap from event to identity, and refusing to let it make that jump unchallenged. The involuntary replay system, you're not thinking about it. You're making coffee, or sitting in traffic, or halfway through a conversation about something completely unrelated. And then, without warning, without invitation, it's back. The moment in full detail, with the same flush of heat and the same clench of discomfort as the first time. This involuntary replay is one of the most universally reported features of embarrassing memories, and it has a specific neurological basis. The hippocampus, the brain's memory consolidation system, works in conjunction with the amygdala during sleep and during periods of low cognitive demand to process and consolidate emotionally significant memories. This is why embarrassing memories often surface in the quiet moments, in the space between tasks, in the transition between waking and sleep. The brain is doing maintenance work, filing, processing, cross-referencing the memory against other social data. The problem is that this maintenance process feels, from the inside, like persecution. Like the brain is intentionally rubbing your face in something you'd give anything to forget. It isn't. It's trying to do something useful with the information, to extract the social lesson and store it for future reference. Unfortunately, the process of doing so requires revisiting the memory, repeatedly, until the brain is satisfied that the lesson has been learned. The most effective way to accelerate this process is not to fight the memory when it appears. It is to let it play, recognize it without judgment, and allow the brain to finish its work. The replay slows down when the brain stops receiving signals that the memory is still dangerous. The hidden gift in the glitch, and finally, the part of embarrassment that almost nobody talks about. Because embarrassment is so universally unpleasant, and the brain glitches it produces are so vivid and so memorable, it's easy to conclude that embarrassment is purely a problem to be minimized or avoided. But researchers who study the social emotions have found something more complicated. People who feel embarrassment readily, who are capable of that involuntary, visible, authentic embarrassment response, are consistently rated by others as more trustworthy, more likable, and more morally reliable than people who don't show embarrassment. The capacity to feel embarrassed signals something important to the social world around you. It signals that you have a conscience, that you care about the effect of your behavior on others, that you are not indifferent to social norms and to the people around you. The person who never seems embarrassed, who moves through social missteps without any visible acknowledgement, is actually perceived as less safe, not more confident, because the embarrassment response, for all its discomfort, is a form of social honesty. It is your brain telling the truth about itself in public, without filtering it, without managing it, without choosing the most flattering presentation. And in a world where so much of social performance is managed and curated and carefully constructed, that raw, uncontrolled, unedited truth is rarer and more valuable than it looks. Your brain glitches when you're embarrassed. But in glitching, in losing control of the performance for just a moment, it shows people something real. And real, it turns out, is exactly what people were hoping to see.